Well, the sparks start to fly immediately, and they say, you're asking me after we kept this idea alive for 500 years in face of an inquisition, in face of death, that I need to convert to Judaism? But I'm a Jew. And they say, yes, we've come here to learn. We're not saying we won't go through the learning process to find out what we have to do and what the rituals are and so on and so forth, but to ask us to convert. And a lot of them at that point, even early, will be turned away and say, no, I don't think I like the sound of this.
Okay, now what's the problem with the cultural problem with the Ashkenazic versus
Well, the other problem that they face when they're trying to come back, I'm not saying all of them go away. Some of them say, all right, if that's what's necessary, we will come back. And a few rabbis have been extremely sensitive and said, well, we'll put you through the conversion as we know it, almost the same thing, but in the end we'll give you something called a certificate of return to make you, more pride in that, more dignity in that. The other problem they face is they come into a mainstream American congregation, these people from a Hispanic background, and they find that Judaism is Eastern European based, it's a Yiddish based, it's a rye bread based, it's a bagels based culture, and they come from a Spanish-based culture. They come from, almost a tortilla. So they find very little that they can identify with. And the old Spanish-based or Sephardic cultures from Spain and Portugal, with their songs and with their melodies and everything else, exist. But they've almost been eliminated from the American scene. We have Sephardic congregations today, but in the last 20 years they've shifted very heavily towards a culture which really emphasizes the Jews from Arab lands, which is a totally different Arabic-based culture of Jewish life.
Originally Spanish, Portuguese.
These have a Spanish base, a Portuguese base. They don't know, and they're as uncomfortable with an Arab-based Judaism as they are with an Eastern European-based Judaism, so they feel they don't belong. But there are signs that this may change as more and more of them are beginning to make the return. First of all, there's enough of them in a synagogue. They become, albeit tiny at the moment, enough of a base for the synagogue to start looking at programs that might introduce them to their heritage, that might sing some of their songs, the songs from Spain that many Sephardim took into the diaspora, the Sephardic diaspora around the Mediterranean, and make them feel as though because there are many Spanish-based prayers that survive today, but they're just not used. So they're beginning to use them. The other, what I think is one of the most hopeful signs, is that we have at least 5 or 6, and probably more, it sounds a small number, but it is, that have now graduated as fully fledged rabbis. JTS has graduates, Hebrew Union College has graduates, Reconstructionists had their very first converso graduate. These are young men who first did the full conversion process, halakha, perfectly.
Each according to their movement, right? The reform.
Each according to their movement, they were fully accepted into their movement, and they went through all of the necessaries, and then they applied to the rabbinic college, and they went through the full, or are going through the full rabbinic training, absolutely kosher.
So they have a mission to
well, they feel a sense, they're just beginning, because they're still students, most of them, but they're beginning to feel a tremendous sense of leadership to these others that want to come back. And I think that they will eventually be able to introduce programs that'll make these people feel a little bit more at home.
We've neglected these people, haven't we?
It's mind-boggling, because when all of the discussion centers on the loss of Jews, how we're losing here and we're losing there and we're losing for this reason, we're losing for that reason, and we have people knocking on the door begging to come back who have a legitimate claim to Judaism, and then they're not coming from left field.
Right.
Why we're not reaching out and actually doing more to put out the carpet, the welcome mat, as it were, and say, yes, please come in. We know that you're out there. We welcome you. We want to do what we can to help you.
Well, I'm toying with the idea that our conversion laws were based on our fear of the authorities. We turn somebody away 3 times, so that if you're living, as a minority in Rome or Greece, you might save yourself by saying to the authorities, "Well, I turned them away 3 times. What do you want from me? I'm not proselytizing."
This isn't proselytizing. These are people who are simply coming in and saying, "I want to join the Jewish world where I originally belonged." There's nothing to do with proselytizing. We're not going out and trying to reach out and say, "Come in." We're not doing that at all. We're saying to the people who are coming in, well, I'm not sure. And as I was telling you earlier, I think there's a very interesting parallel with the Soviet Jews who came out about 15 to 20 years ago from the Soviet Union, 3 generations at least, where they had no Jewish practice. They hardly remembered they were Jews, except it was part of their identification papers. They didn't know what it was to be a Jew. In that case, when they came out and they came here or they went to Israel, the Jewish world collectively and institutionally, and right down to the congregations in the various towns, put themselves out to collect money, to find them housing, to find them jobs, to welcome them in. I asked some of them, I said, when you went to the congregations, were you asked to actually convert? And they said, no, it's happening. The only place where they are coming up the same problems as the conversos are is apparently during marriage. Some of in Israel, where you have to go through an Orthodox marriage to be married, religiously married in Israel, the Orthodox is saying, I'm not sure that we can do this. So that is one issue that they're facing. But by and large, they faced a much, much, much warmer welcome mat.
Yes, I hear your point loud and clear. We always bemoan the lost tribes of Israel and the, like you said, we've lost our people through the pogroms, we lost them through the Holocaust, we lost them through the Inquisitions, and now they're knocking on the door because they've learned about their ancestry. They probably have not felt completely at home with Catholicism. If they're feeling this tug, it's a different thought. It's a different system.
Yes, but it's not the religion that the tug is tugging them. It's a familial tie. It's a tribal thing.
The Jewish people.
The Jewish people. I created some lessons for them, a series for children called Out of Spain, where we show where they actually came from, but we have nothing, as we have very little else we don't have a Judaism 101 for them.
Let's talk to that map. Hopefully inside they'll play the map. And tell us a little bit about the migration, Well, from that map, you see how they did migrate to Central and South America and why they are so numerous there. Because at one point, they were half of the European population in these countries. Wow.
And so, it's escalated and escalated and escalated ever since then over these centuries. It's enormous. But we need materials for them. They're begging for stuff in Spanish. That explains their heritage, that some of, instead of, English language and Hebrew or whatever, alternate language we have for our prayer books, they want Spanish, Hebrew, Spanish one side, Hebrew the other.
But, you had mentioned about the rabbinical academies in Brazil and Argentina. They're still Ashkenazic institutions, but still they speak Spanish. Can't they
You would think
assist?
That they would assist, and they would. But again, I'm not hearing that they are assisting, because today in a lot of the Jewish world in South America or Central America has become Ashkenazi-based since the Second World War, or just before the Second World War. Even actually at the beginning of the 20th century, you had a great many Ashkenazim who went to these countries, and very often the rabbis in those countries are Ashkenazi rabbis. And you would think there would be materials. Apparently they're not. They're screaming for them. I met a teacher only over the holidays who was talking about the fact that the community in Belmonte, Portugal, which was the first Converso community to organize and have documentaries made about them, all these strange people up in the mountains and the villages, they came back to Judaism, they feel forgotten. While there was a big to-do about them at the beginning, he was telling me that today their children have just given up on the whole idea because the Jewish community has kind of ignored them.